Have you ever felt drained? Not because life is too hard or work is overwhelming, but because you've been giving so much to things that give you nothing in return. You're tired because you're constantly thinking about someone who never thinks about you. A single, careless word keeps you up at night. A glance stays with you for days. Even a passing comment loops in your mind 100 times. And strangely, it's these tiny things that quietly pull your heart away from the peace that's meant to be yours. Maybe you've become used to reacting, explaining, proving yourself, controlling everything, so much so, you don't even notice you're tangled in a web of invisible threads. The thread of expectations, the thread of judgment, the thread of fear, the thread of needing to be accepted. But what if you stopped for a moment and simply looked at your own reactions? Let's take that pause together. Not to change the world, but to let go of what's been quietly pulling you away from your own peace. I invite you to stop just for a moment. There's no need to rush, no need to chase. Just sit here. Take a gentle breath and listen, not with your ears, but with your heart. You see, many people go through life believing that happiness is something you have to chase, to earn, to achieve after you've worked hard enough, succeeded enough, or been praised enough. They think that once they have a better home, a perfect partner, a higher title, or just a little more stability, then they'll finally feel at peace. But that someday never seems to arrive. They keep walking, keep reaching, like someone chasing their own shadow. The more they run, the further it seems. And one day, after a heartbreak, a failure, or a dream that didn't come true, they realize what they've been searching for all along was never out there. The Buddha said the awakened one does not seek happiness in the future, but lives deeply in the present. Sometimes happiness is simply the ability to stop without feeling guilty, to breathe deeply without feeling like you're wasting time, to sit alone without feeling like something's missing. But have you noticed, somewhere along the way, we've lost the ability to stop. Some people, even while sitting still, have a mind that races like a child running from room to room. The moment they open their eyes, they check messages, scroll headlines, plan the day, worry about tomorrow. And if they do nothing at all, they feel uneasy, like they're falling behind. That's a kind of spiritual hunger, a hunger of the heart that isn't being fed by presence, but starved by goals, tasks, and pressure. Are you hungry like that? I'm not asking what you've accomplished or how much you own. I'm only asking, when was the last time you truly felt light? When was the last time you felt content? For no particular reason. I once met a man who had everything: wealth, status, success. But one day, he sighed and said to me, "Master, why do I still feel so empty?" I looked at him. He was like a boat filled with treasures, drifting down a dried-up river, full on the outside, empty on the inside. And I said, "Maybe you've gone too far away from yourself. Happiness isn't something you need to search for. Maybe you just need to stop and come home. Come home to where? To this moment, this very moment where you're not trying to be someone else, not trying to be understood, not running toward anything, just simply being here, now." Think about it, flowers don't chase the sun to bloom. They just need sunlight, water, and a quiet space to grow. Your heart is no different. When there is stillness, presence, and gentle nourishment, joy begins to blossom on its own. But sadly, we keep believing we have to do more, achieve more, prove more, just to deserve happiness. It's the ego's most clever illusion, a trap that keeps whispering, "You're not enough yet." The Buddha said, "No one can give you happiness. You must find it within yourself. Don't seek it from others." The truth is, happiness is not a reward, it's a state of mind. It doesn't live in conditions. It lives in your release. So what must we release? Let go of the belief that you must become someone to be worthy. Let go of the pressure that says you must do something to be loved. Let go of the habit of comparing your life to others like you're stuck in a race with no finish line. Those who know how to stop begin to see clearly. They see the endless loops of craving. They see that small things can be miraculous. They see that sometimes a quiet evening, a cup of warm tea, and a moment of stillness in a simple room is already enough. You don't need to go far to find peace, because if your heart isn't at peace, no place will feel right. But if peace is in your heart, then even in the middle of chaos, you can smile like a blooming flower. Happiness is not something you can buy, hold, or keep. It's something you realize the moment you stop searching. So, maybe the real question isn't, what more do I need to be happy? But instead, what can I let go of today so I can feel a little lighter? And perhaps, just by stopping, you're already much closer to the peace you thought you had to travel 1,000 miles to find. Are you tired? Not the kind of tired that comes from jogging around the park or working a long shift. I'm talking about a different kind of tired, the deep kind, the one you can't quite put into words. It sits somewhere in your chest, sometimes heavy, sometimes hollow. And even if no one else sees it, you know it's there. Every morning when you wake up, every night when you lie down, even when you smile and pretend everything's fine. Have you ever asked yourself, why am I this exhausted? You might think it's the workload, the stress, the endless responsibilities. But if you look closer, it's not the job that's draining you. It's the fact that you're giving so much to things that give you nothing in return. You're spending your precious energy on things that don't nourish you. The conversations you replay in your head, the texts you type and delete out of fear, they'll be misunderstood. The people you always care about, even though they rarely think of you. The offhand comments that linger in your mind like truth. The silence of others that you interpret as rejection. All of that, it chips away at you, like a quiet wind slowly blowing out the fire within. The Buddha once said, "The mind is like a lamp. If we don't protect it, the winds of ignorance will blow it out." You give so much and receive so little, not because you're not worthy, but because you're pouring yourself into the wrong places, into cups with holes at the bottom. Places where love isn't valued, efforts aren't seen, and your presence is taken for granted. Maybe you're the kind of person who always listens, helps, and gives others the benefit of the doubt. But that's also why people leave their emotions with you and walk away. Like you're a rest stop, not a destination. I know You don't want to become selfish. You want to be kind, understanding, compassionate. But kindness without boundaries becomes self-destruction unless the one holding it learns to care for themselves too. Are you caring for yourself? Or are you using every part of your heart to comfort the world while your own heart quietly breaks? There's a verse in the Dhammapada. Those who do not master their mind are like leaves in the wind, weary from every gust life brings. And you know, life brings a lot of wind. Someone might say, "You're cold because you didn't reply fast enough." Another might get upset when you don't meet their expectations. Someone might ignore you and then blame you for not being thoughtful. If your heart sways with every breeze, when will you ever feel at peace? You weren't born to be the one who's always on time, always perfect, always pleasing. You were born to be real, to love with awareness, to give with mindfulness, and to hold sacred space just for you. So if one day you feel completely worn out, don't push yourself harder. Ask instead, what's truly making me feel this way? You might discover it's not that you've done too much, but that you've been carrying too many things that don't belong to you. You're maintaining relationships that force you to perform. You're stuck in roles that make you forget who you are. You're replying to messages not because you want to, but because you're afraid of letting people down. And you're living in a world where someone else's silence makes you question your own worth. Piece by piece, all of that dims your light. But you're not someone who doesn't know how to love. You're just someone who needs to learn to love the right way, again starting with yourself. Love the quiet parts of you. Love the nights you've comforted yourself to sleep. Love the times you said nothing, but still felt everything. Love the way you're still trying to be a good person in a world that can be noisy and careless. And build yourself a new habit. When you feel drained, don't rush to blame the world. Ask instead, am I giving too much of myself to things that no longer serve me? If the answer is yes, then maybe it's time to take a gentle step back, not to give up, but to return to a quiet place within you that's been waiting all along. A place where you don't have to be anything for anyone, where you can just be you. And take a long, deep breath, as if it's the first time today you've truly allowed yourself to rest. You deserve rest, not after you've pleased everyone, but now, simply because you've realized you've been giving too much to things that give nothing back. And maybe from there, you'll start to remember how to live again, more gently, more peacefully, and more in love with your own soul. You've probably heard this before. Time heals all wounds. But I want to ask you, does time really heal, or do we just learn to bury our feelings deeper and deeper until no one can see them? Not even ourselves. Here's something strange. Most people aren't afraid of emotions. They're afraid of feeling them. Have you ever done this? The moment sadness hits you, try to stay busy. When anger rises, you suppress it or find someone to blame. When loneliness comes knocking, you turn on the TV scroll, your phone call, someone, anything to avoid sitting alone with your feelings. Not because you're weak, but because you were taught that negative emotions should be avoided, conquered, or pushed away. But the Buddha taught something completely different. He said emotions are like passing clouds. They come and go, but the sky behind them is always clear. You don't need to chase away your sadness. You don't need to fight your anger. You don't need to pretend you're okay when your heart is breaking. Because the truth is, emotions don't hurt you. Resisting them does. They're like waves on a lake. If you let them pass, they dissolve. But if you try to suppress them, they build up stronger and stronger until they break everything apart. The deepest wounds often don't come from the first emotion, but from denying yourself the right to fully feel it. You feel sad but feel guilty for being sad. You get angry but feel ashamed for being angry. You feel fear but pretend to be strong. And over time, unacknowledged emotions settle at the bottom of your inner cup like dust. Eventually, they make the whole cup heavy and murky, leaving you anxious and unsettled without knowing why. In Buddhism, this is called clinging to resistance, rejecting what's happening inside you. And from that rejection, suffering is born. Do you remember the last time you cried? Not because of something big, but maybe because of a careless word or a small moment when you felt invisible, unheard. The pain wasn't in the words. It was in how you swallowed them and then blamed yourself for being too sensitive. I've met so many people who wear the mask of strength while inside a child still waits to be comforted. They know how to succeed. They know how to care for others. But they don't know how to sit quietly and say to themselves, "I'm hurting, and that's okay." The Buddha said, "The mind is the root of everything. When the mind is at peace, everything is at peace." But your mind can't be at peace if you keep rejecting it. Try something simple. When a feeling shows up, don't rush to judge it. Just silently say, "This is sadness." This is disappointment. Then instead of reacting or escaping, just be there. Watch. Listen. Like a friend who stays. When you stop fighting your emotions, you begin to heal. A woman once told me that after years of running from the pain of losing her mother, she finally stopped. She sat alone, opened an old photo, and let herself cry without holding back. And in that moment, her pain didn't feel like the enemy anymore. She said, "For the first time in years, I felt close to my mom again." Emotions, when held with mindfulness, become doors to deep inner understanding. You don't have to be positive all the time. You don't have to move on quickly. You just have to be honest and brave enough to pause. Pause to look within. Pause to allow yourself to hurt. Pause so you're no longer afraid of your own feelings. Because you are not your emotions. You are the one observing them. And the observer is never harmed unless they try to push emotions away. When you allow yourself to feel, you allow yourself to live fully. And in that fullness, something truly sacred begins to arise: freedom. Freedom isn't the absence of emotion. It's no longer being ruled by it. You'll see anger can dissolve like smoke. Sadness can float away like clouds, as long as you don't cling to them. Don't reject them. Don't treat them like they don't belong to you. They belong to you, but they don't define you. So the next time an emotion rises, don't ask, "How do I get rid of this?" Ask, "How can I hold this without losing myself?" Because the moment you stop resisting, you begin returning home to yourself. And there, peace has always been waiting. Have you ever met someone who in the middle of their life, falling apart, could still sit quietly, smile, and say, "It's okay. This too shall pass"? And then there are others. One unpleasant word, and their whole day unravels. They can't eat, can't sleep. Their peace crumbles like paper in the wind. Same life, same struggles, but a very different inner world. And that right there is the difference between peace and chaos. Because peace doesn't come from what's happening around you. It comes from how you meet what's happening. Some people can feel calm even in the middle of a noisy city. Others feel restless even in the middle of a quiet forest. The difference isn't in the city or the forest. It's in the mind. Is it resting or running wild? Buddha once said, "No one can hurt you unless you allow it to happen within your own mind." It sounds simple, but living by that truth takes deep awareness and understanding that what happens out there is just a small part of life. The bigger part is how you respond to it. Have you ever noticed how on some days, just a bit of traffic makes you furious? But on other days, even being late by an hour doesn't bother you. It's not the traffic. It's the state of your mind. Was it open and spacious or tight and cramped? When your mind is already filled with stress, even one small drop can overflow the cup. But when your inner space is calm and open, even a storm can pass through without shaking you. I remember a man who once came to me and said, "Master, I feel like life is so unfair. I work hard, I try to be kind, and yet trouble keeps finding me. I'm exhausted." I looked at him quietly for a while and then asked, "Do you know that farmers don't curse the land for rain or sun? They simply learn how to sow nurture and wait for harvest. They can't control the weather, but they can control how they live with it. You may not control life, but you can always choose how to receive it." He sat in silence for a long time. Then he cried. Not because I said something profound, but because for the first time, he realized he hadn't really been living his life. He'd been resisting it, fighting what he couldn't change. And many of us live that way, fighting life, fighting people, and sometimes fighting ourselves. But what if just for a moment you took a breath, softened your grip, and asked, "What am I resisting?" You might see that most of your unrest doesn't come from life itself, but from your refusal to accept it. You wish others understood you. You wish life had turned out differently. You wish the past could change. You wish the pain never happened. All those wishes, they become invisible chains. And when they tighten, your mind can never truly rest. The Buddha taught letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means releasing what's hurting your heart. Maybe you're holding on to an old anger, not because they deserve it, but because you're not ready to release it. Maybe you're haunted by a past decision, as if thinking about it one more time could rewrite history. Maybe you're trying to change a loved one, as if their transformation is the only way you can be at peace. But ask yourself, is that really true? Are you certain that when they finally understand you, when life finally bends your way, when everything becomes just right, you'll finally feel peace, or will your mind still find something missing, something wrong, something that just doesn't feel enough? You see, if your peace depends on the world outside, you might be waiting forever. Because life was never meant to meet all your expectations. But if you turn inward, if you learn to breathe, when things get hard to soften, when life gets sharp to smile, even when things don't go your way, then that's when you begin to touch what the ancients called freedom in the midst of chaos. Peace doesn't come because everything is calm. Peace comes because you are no longer shaken by the storm. Like a tree rooted deep into the ground, it may lose a few leaves when the wind blows, but its roots hold firm. And your roots, they're mindfulness. They're your return to the present. They're the trust that you can face life without losing yourself. Because in the end, life will keep moving. Things will always change, but if you can hold your center, you won't be dragged along by the current. You'll learn how to stand still, not because the world has gone quiet, but because you're no longer afraid. And that is where peace begins. Not somewhere else, but here, inside you. In this breath, the moment you stop fighting what is, and simply allow yourself to begin again with a mind that's truly at peace. There are days when you feel like a storm. Your mind spins in circles. Emotions rise like waves, crashing against the shore. Anger, sadness, disappointment. You feel fragile, like one more thing. Just one might break you completely. But my friend, here's the truth. You are not the storm. You are the sky, vast, still, unshaken, capable of holding every storm without ever being swept away. We often forget that. When we're angry, we say, "I'm an angry person." When we're sad, we say, "I'm weak." When anxiety visits, we sigh. Something's wrong with me. But the Buddha teaches these emotions are not who we are. They're just passing states of mind like clouds drifting through the sky. They arise. They stay for a while, then they go. You are not your anger. You are not your fear. You are not your sadness. You are the awareness behind it all. The open, calm sky that watches but does not cling. Imagine sitting quietly looking up at the sky. Dark clouds roll in. Thunder rumbles. Rain begins to pour. You can't stop the storm, but you also don't have to panic or fight it. The sky doesn't resist. It doesn't collapse. It simply waits, unmoved, present, because it knows this too shall pass, and your mind is the same. When a wave of anger rises, it won't last forever. Unless we grab onto it, fuel it with blame or overthinking, it will fade. Just like clouds, emotions move if we let them go. Have you ever seen a gloomy afternoon where it felt like the sun would never come back? And then suddenly, a ray of light breaks through the clouds. That's you. Your true self is that sun, always shining behind the storm. Even when it feels buried, it's never gone. But when we suffer, we tend to forget. We don't say, "I'm feeling disappointment." We say, "I'm a failure." And just like that, we identify with the storm. We get lost in it. We think, "This is who I am. This is permanent." But it's not. You are greater than every passing emotion. You're not the anger you once felt. You're not the fear you've carried. You're not the mistakes you've made. You are the space in which all of those things appear and disappear. There's a Zen teaching that says the mind is like the vast sky. It contains all things. That means your heart is big enough to hold every emotion, every experience, every rise and fall, without being defined or confined by them. You can be angry and still carry compassion. You can be sad and still be clear-minded. You can feel disappointed and still take the next step forward. Why? Because you are not the storm. You are the one watching it. You are the one learning to return home to your own spacious heart. And that return begins the moment you pause, notice your emotion, and say, "Welcome, anger. I see you, but I am not you." That moment of awareness, so simple, is the beginning of your freedom. You'll find that anger loses its grip. Sadness no longer defines you. And anxiety becomes just another cloud passing through. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha's teaching on mindfulness, he invites us to observe the body, feelings, mind, and phenomena without attachment. To see sadness as just a feeling. To see anger as just a mental event. Not to fight, not to judge, just to notice. And remember, I'm still here. I'm breathing. I'm the sky, unmoved, spacious whole. And you can try this at any moment. When a storm rises, don't rush to react. Just place a hand on your heart, take a slow breath, and ask, what is this storm here to teach me? Because sometimes storms don't come to destroy. They come to clear the air for something more peaceful to grow. You are the sky, not the cloud. You are the space, not what moves through it. And once you truly know that, you no longer fear your emotions. You welcome them all, like a kind host greeting guests, no matter how they show up. And then you'll see, your mind, like the sky, remains endlessly open. And no matter how strong the storm, it cannot take away your peace. Just remember this. You are not the storm. You are the sky. And the sky is always waiting for you to come home. Are you waiting for something? A response, a sign that someone cares, a change from someone you love, a result that matches what your heart longs for. If so, you're not alone. Most of us live tied to invisible threads called expectations. We hope the people we love will understand us. We hope our friends will act the way we imagine they should. We hope life will be kinder, fairer, more timely. But what we rarely see is this. These threads of hope are often the very things that bind our inner freedom. The Buddha once said, "There is no greater suffering than not getting what you want." And that want, that longing, is simply another form of expectation. I once sat with a man whose face carried years of exhaustion. He told me how he spent decades trying to please his parents, to make his wife and kids proud, to earn the respect of friends. But the more he gave, the smaller and more invisible he felt. When I asked him, what hurts the most? He replied, the feeling of never being enough. Even when I've given nearly everything I had. That is the price of expectation. When you place your happiness in someone else's hands, when your peace depends on whether someone loves you back the way you want, says the words you long to hear, or acts in the way you silently hope for. Picture this. You're holding a rope. The other end is tied to a person, a result, a future that hasn't yet arrived. And you grip that rope tightly. The longer you hold it, the more your hand aches. And the pain, it doesn't come because the other side is pulling hard. It comes because you won't let go. Expectation isn't bad in itself, but without mindfulness, it becomes a burden. Because life doesn't follow our personal calendar, and people weren't born to play roles we've scripted in our heads. They're struggling through their own stories. Have you ever waited for a message and felt sad when it didn't come? Have you ever thought, maybe they don't care about me, simply because they were silent? Then you spiraled into disappointment, trapped in a story you wrote but never shared. But dear one, they didn't hurt you. Your expectation did. The Buddha taught, attachment is the root of all suffering. And in its most subtle form, attachment wears the mask of expectation. You expect your child to show gratitude, but sometimes they choose their own path. You expect your partner to understand your every unspoken feeling, but they stay quiet when you need them most. You expect the good you do to be returned quickly, but life sends challenges instead. And in every broken expectation, there's a tired heart worn from holding on. But here's the truth. You don't need to stop caring. You don't have to become cold or distant. You simply need to soften the belief that things must go my way. Letting go doesn't mean letting go of the people you love. Letting go means letting go of the version of them you built in your mind. It doesn't mean giving up your goals. It means being open to the fact that outcomes may look different, and that doesn't mean you failed. There's a Buddhist teaching I hold dear. We don't suffer because of loss. We suffer because we refuse to accept the loss. The pain isn't in someone not showing up. It's in believing they had to. It's not in a door closing. It's in believing that door should have stayed open. Do you see freedom doesn't come when you can control everything? Freedom comes when you make peace with what you cannot control. And sometimes letting go of one single thread of expectation is what allows you to finally hold on to yourself. So let me ask you, what are you waiting for today? An apology, recognition, someone to change? If yes, look at your hands. How long have you been gripping that rope? How tired have you become from holding on? And then just try, just once, gently loosening your grip. Not to give up on love, but to love with more lightness, more freedom. You'll begin to notice when you're no longer pulled by the weight of expectations, you can stand tall, grounded in your own peace. You can love without fear, give without needing anything back, live without needing to control every outcome. And the miracle is this: when you let go, you don't lose anything. You just come home to yourself. And that, dear one, is where true freedom begins. Not in a clenched fist, but in a heart that has learned to open and let things be. There's a common misunderstanding about what it really means to let go. Many people think letting go means giving up, that it means you no longer care, that you've become indifferent or emotionally cold. But the truth couldn't be more different. Letting go is not indifference. Letting go is freedom. Freedom from the need to be understood. Freedom from the craving to be seen as right, to be acknowledged, to prove that we're good and the other person is wrong. Have you ever been stuck in an endless argument where you kept explaining kept trying to clarify your point, hoping the other person would finally get it. And the more you explained, the more drained you felt. The more words you used, the lonelier you became. And in the end, they still didn't understand. So you walk away, not angry at the issue itself, but with that quiet ache in your chest, the feeling of not being seen, not being heard. You know, I've met so many people in pain, not because they were hurt, but because no one understood them in their pain. They carried the weight of injustice like a stone in their heart, holding on to the belief, if only they understood me, then I could finally heal. But here's the truth. You don't need anyone to understand you in order to heal. What you do need is to turn inward and meet yourself with kindness. And that only becomes possible when you release the need to be understood. The Buddha once taught clinging to right and wrong is the root of conflict. Let go of right and wrong, and the mind finds peace. It sounds simple, but how many of us are truly willing to give up the urge to prove we're right? I once sat with a woman in her 50s. She spoke about a marriage that had ended long ago. But what hurt her the most wasn't the separation. It was the fact that her ex-husband still believed she was the problem, that she was the one who failed the marriage. She said to me, "I don't need him to come back. I just wish he could see how hard I tried." I looked at her gently and asked, "And if he never does, could you still find peace?" She went silent. Then her eyes welled with tears, because in that moment she saw it. She had been waiting all these years for peace to come from someone else, but peace was waiting for her to stop needing that. You see, when you're still longing to be understood, you've unknowingly handed your inner peace over to someone else. And if they don't give it back, you suffer. Letting go doesn't mean you accept being misunderstood. It means you stop needing agreement to love yourself. They may never see your truth, but you can still move forward. You can still live kindly. You can still sleep peacefully with no bitterness in your heart, because you've realized something powerful. No one is required to understand you for you to live a full life. Letting go also means releasing the need for validation. You no longer have to be right in everyone's eyes. You don't have to chase down every rumor or correct every misconception. You know that if your heart is clear, even silence becomes your response. The Buddha said, "One who knows who they are does not need to be confirmed by others." I once saw a painting, a fish swimming in water, a bird soaring in the sky. Both were free, but if you forced the fish to fly or demanded the bird to dive, neither would be free anymore. That's how life works. Everyone sees the world through their own lens. You cannot change every perception, but you can choose to live with a heart that is unburdened by the need to be right. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to make them see. Just take a gentle breath and let misunderstandings pass like clouds in the sky. I know that's not easy, because our ego craves recognition. But when you let go, even just once, you'll notice something strange. Your heart feels lighter. The sun inside you shines a little brighter. And you begin to smile, not because they finally understood you, but because you finally understood yourself. And that is the deepest kind of freedom. It doesn't come from anyone. It doesn't wait on anything. It simply arises. The moment you stop holding on, you'll see letting go doesn't make you cold. Letting go makes you warm enough that you no longer need to be warmed by anyone else, and strong enough to stay still even when the world doesn't understand you. Because now you understand you, and truly, that is enough. Have you ever felt like life is one big river, sometimes calm, sometimes crashing, and sometimes so wild it feels like it might sweep you away? In moments like that, you feel incredibly small. One unexpected event can shake your heart. One careless word can throw off your entire day. One unmet expectation can make you doubt yourself. And you quietly wonder, how do I stay grounded in the middle of all this chaos? How do I stop myself from being swept away? The answer lies in one simple word: mindfulness. Mindfulness isn't some mystical or elite practice. You don't need to meditate 10 hours a day. You don't need to retreat to a mountain. Mindfulness is simply being fully present with what's happening right now, with an awake and aware mind. In Buddhism, sati mindfulness is the very heart of spiritual practice. Because without mindfulness, the mind is easily pulled away by the past, the future fears, and imagination. When your mind gets swept away by life's currents, you're like a leaf on water, tossed by the waves, pushed by the wind, with no idea where you're going. But when you're mindful, you become like a boat with an anchor. The water still moves, but you don't drift. Things still happen, but you don't lose yourself. I once met a man in his 60s who told me that after he retired, he started feeling useless, like society no longer needed him. Every morning, he woke up anxious. He tried many things, reading, exercising, even sleep aids. But it wasn't until a 7-day meditation retreat that he learned about mindfulness, and everything began to shift. He told me, I realized I don't need to keep searching for something to prove I have value. Just being present with my breath, I've already come back to myself. He stopped obsessing over needing to be useful to feel worthy. He learned to breathe mindfully, to wash dishes with gratitude, to sip tea with presence, and slowly, peace returned to his heart. The Buddha taught dwelling in the present moment is the only place you can truly live. The past, whether beautiful or painful, is gone. The future, whether hopeful or worrisome, has not arrived. Only this moment is real. And mindfulness is the bridge that carries you from unconsciousness to awareness, from reacting to responding, from being a victim to becoming the master of your mind. You might be eating, but your mind is replaying yesterday's argument. You might be listening to someone, but your thoughts are already formulating a response. Mindfulness doesn't ask you to be empty. It invites you to be fully present, to see clearly that you are chewing, to know deeply that you are listening without judgment, to recognize that anger is rising, but it doesn't have to take over. I remember a young man once asked me, "Teacher, my life feels like a marketplace, loud, messy, chaotic. How do I find peace in all of this?" I smiled and asked, "Have you ever seen a vendor in the middle of the market? They still know how to count change, still see who's standing in front of them, right?" He nodded. I said, "That's because they're there. They're not lost in the noise. Your mindfulness is the same. It doesn't help you escape the marketplace. It helps you stay centered, right in it, without getting tangled. Dear friend, life will still be noisy. Work will still be demanding. People may still say things that hurt you. But if you have mindfulness as your anchor, you won't be swept away by emotions. You'll notice, this is anger. This is envy. This is the judging mind. And once you see clearly, you're no longer controlled by them. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha taught the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Observe the body. Observe feelings. Observe mental states. Observe phenomena with awareness. Not to control, just to see clearly. Because when you see clearly, you'll know what to do. A mindful person knows when to speak, when to stay quiet, knows when to hold on, when to let go, knows how to care for their body and mind, not like a strict master, but like a compassionate friend. Mindfulness is a return to yourself, where you're no longer being dragged around by the winds of life, where you can place your hand on your heart, take a deep breath, and truly feel, I am alive right now, fully. And sometimes that alone is enough to begin a new day with steadiness, like a boat anchored calmly in the middle of the storm. Are you waiting for something to finally feel complete? Maybe you're waiting for someone to compliment you. Maybe you're hoping a plan will go more smoothly. Maybe you're quietly wishing that someone from your past would come back and say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Waiting to be loved. Waiting for things to go your way. Waiting for something, anything, to finally bring you peace. If you've ever waited like that, you're not alone. Most of us grow up believing that happiness comes when we're loved, seen, understood. That peace only arrives when life feels perfectly in place. But the truth is, you don't need any of that to be at peace. You don't need everyone to love you. You don't need your life plan to unfold flawlessly. You don't need the past to come back and apologize. All you need is yourself, right here, right now, with a gentle acceptance. I am enough just as I am. The Buddha said, be an island unto yourself. Take refuge in your own being. That's not just a wise saying. It's a wake-up call. You don't have to keep searching for enoughness, because what's enough has always been there. You just haven't paused long enough to see it. Some people spend their whole lives chasing a single word of recognition. They exhaust themselves trying to please everyone just to hear I'm proud of you. And sometimes those words never come. Or when they do, they still don't feel like enough. Because what they're truly missing was never external. It was the absence of connection within. You don't need someone to love you first, so you can finally learn to love yourself. Love is not a math equation where your worth grows only if enough people approve. Real love begins the moment you stop bending yourself just to be loved. Someone once asked me, how do I get over the feeling of not being appreciated, of not being loved in the way I hoped? I simply asked, have you ever sat with yourself in compassion? Have you ever placed your hand over your heart and whispered, I'm here for you no matter who stays or goes? You can't control another person's heart, but you can choose to be someone who no longer needs every heart to turn toward them in order to feel whole. And there's more. You don't need your life plan to be perfect. Have you ever tried to control every single detail, You mapped out the days, prepared every step, and hoped everything would go exactly as imagined, only to be thrown off by one small change. The truth is, life is not a scripted performance. It's a flowing river, sometimes calm, sometimes unpredictable. The more you tighten your grip, the more it slips away. The Buddha taught, expectation is the root of suffering. When your peace depends on everything going according to plan, you're locking yourself in an illusion. But if you allow yourself to stay flexible, open, and ready to adjust your mindset instead of trying to control the outcome, you'll notice something powerful. Even when things don't go your way, you can still smile. True peace isn't found in everything being right. It's found in being right with yourself, no matter what's happening around you. And finally, you don't need an apology from the past to heal. People may have hurt you. They might never come back. Maybe they don't see what they did. Maybe they don't remember. Maybe they no longer think of you at all. And still, you can heal. Without their apology, without their understanding. Because forgiveness isn't a gift you give to others. It's a gift you offer to your own heart. You deserve to live a life no longer weighed down by old pain. You don't need to cling to your wounds to prove your story. You only need to be tender enough with yourself to say, I'm not waiting anymore. I'm moving on. And in that exact moment, the moment you stop waiting for something outside of you to make you feel whole, that's when you become truly free. Free to love, free to fail, free to live without needing one more condition to be happy, because you've always been enough. You've just been waiting to remember it, and now you do. There are invisible threads in life ones no one else can see, but they pull you down every single day. They don't make noise. They don't come with warning signs, yet they quietly shape how you think, how you act, and how you feel. They make you try harder than necessary worry about things that haven't happened, and feel exhausted even when life seems fine on the outside. I call them mental traps. And here's the hard part. Most of the time, we don't even realize we're caught in one. One of the biggest traps is the need for approval. Have you ever felt uneasy when someone didn't reply to your message? Have you ever changed the way you spoke just to fit in, or stayed silent? Swallowed your truth just to keep someone else happy? If so, you may be wrapped in a thread called approval. It's thin, almost invisible, but it ties deep. You try to be good, not because it brings you joy, but because you're afraid of being judged. You act kind, not because it reflects your true nature, but because you're hoping someone will acknowledge you. And eventually, you get tired. The Buddha taught one who understands themselves does not need to be understood by others. This isn't about pride. It's about freedom. Because the moment you realize your worth doesn't live in someone else's nod of approval, you start to live differently, more lightly, more truthfully. Another trap, more subtle, is the urge to control everything. You plan every detail. You overthink to avoid mistakes. You want situations, people, and outcomes to unfold exactly as you imagined. But you don't call it control. You call it being careful. You call it being responsible. Yet deep down, it's fear. fear of uncertainty, fear of failure, fear that no one else will do it the right way. And so you start to shrink inside, not because life is too unpredictable, but because you can't accept the imperfection of it all. The Buddha said, "Wisdom is the calm mind facing impermanence." Life is uncertain by nature, and the more you try to control it, the smaller you feel in the face of its wild flow. Letting go of control doesn't mean giving up. It means learning to move with life rather than against it. And perhaps the deepest trap, the one that's hardest to see, is the fear of being abandoned. That fear makes you hold on to relationships even when you no longer recognize yourself in them. It makes you bend too much, give too much, lose yourself, just to keep someone from walking away. You stop speaking your truth. You stop setting boundaries. You settle for less than what you deserve, because the thought of being left again feels unbearable. But here's the truth. When you live in fear of being abandoned, you've already abandoned yourself. The Buddha said, "Rely on yourself. No one can protect you better than you." Yes, people may walk away. Yes, you might lose things you once held dear. But if you remain connected to yourself, you will never truly be alone. These mental traps, they're like ropes wrapped around your spirit. They don't drag you down loudly. They pull you quietly through habit. You've gotten used to living for approval, used to panicking when you can't control things, used to shrinking every time love feels uncertain. And over time, you forget what true freedom feels like inside your own mind. I'm not telling you to cut off relationships, abandon plans, or stop needing love. I'm simply inviting you to ask, are you living from love or from fear? Are your actions rooted in genuine choice or in the fear of being misunderstood? Are you caring for others or just tending to the anxiety in your own heart? The answers come in quiet moments. In each breath, where you pause and look inward, honestly, gently. And when you begin to notice those mental traps, you've already walked halfway toward freedom. The rest of the way, it takes one brave step, letting go of the rope that's been gripping you for far too long. And when you do, you won't fall, you'll fly. There are days when your emotions feel like the tides, rising and falling, full one moment, empty the next. Sometimes they're light as air, and sometimes they weigh on you like stone. You might wake up in peace, feeling centered, but then just one unanswered message, a cold glance, or a careless word, and suddenly your whole inner world shifts, and you carry that feeling with you all day. You hold on to it, spinning it over and over in your mind. You're not just feeling sad, you become sadness. Not just feeling angry, you are the anger. And before you know it, you start telling yourself things like, I'm weak, I'm too emotional, I get hurt too easily. And that is when you begin to lose your spiritual freedom. The Buddha said, emotions are just visitors. They are not the master of the house. They come and they go. But you are the house. Have you ever thought of it that way? You don't have to reject your emotions. You just have to stop clinging to them as if they define who you are. Anger is not you. Fear is not you. Even joy and excitement, those aren't you either. You are the one watching them, like someone sitting quietly by a river, watching the water flow. You're not the river. You're the riverbank. I once met a woman, mid-50s strong, on the outside independent. But when she sat down, she sighed and said, "I'm tired, teacher. My emotions feel like a roller coaster. I don't know why I get so easily affected." I asked her gently, "What do you usually do when those feelings come up?" She said, "I think about them, try to analyze them, figure out why I feel this way. But the more I think, the more exhausted I get." I nodded and replied softly, "That's because you're living in the emotion rather than just letting it pass through." You see, we don't suffer because emotions appear. We suffer because we cling to them. We believe, "I am this emotion, and if I don't control it, I'll fall apart." But the truth is, emotions are like waves. They rise, they fall, they pass. No emotion lasts forever unless you hold on to it. Like a cloud drifting through the sky, it doesn't belong to you. It just passes through. If you let it go, the sky clears again. But if you cling to it, you'll live under that shadow all day. In the Buddhist practice of Satipatthana, or the 4 foundations of mindfulness, there's a section called mindfulness of the mind. When the mind is angry, you simply recognize there is anger in the mind. No judgment, no suppression, just awareness. Because the moment you can name the emotion, you're no longer its prisoner. You become the observer. And the observer is never swept away. I'm not saying you should be numb. I'm inviting you to see emotions as guests at your door. They may stay a while, but you don't have to let them move in forever. An emotion, like anger, might be a signal. It might be telling you something's not okay. Sadness could be pointing to a loss that needs tending. So listen, but don't become it. Let your mind be like a still lake. Yes, it may ripple, but it can still reflect the moon. Emotions come, they go. That's their nature. But if you sit down, breathe softly, and say to yourself, "I feel sad right now," and that's okay. Something shifts. The sadness may still be there, but it no longer holds the reins. You are back in the center of your own being. Not a guest lost in the house of your emotions, but the one who owns the home. My friend, life will always change, and so will your emotions. No one goes through life without being swept away sometimes. But the point is not to avoid feelings, it's to walk through them without losing yourself. And that journey begins with stillness, with a single mindful breath, with a kind gaze toward your own heart, even when it's confused or uneasy. You don't have to be stronger. You just have to be present. Truly present with your emotions without becoming them. And from that still place, you'll learn to walk, not as someone dodging the wind, but as someone who knows how to stand still within it. Because in the end, you are not the wave. You are the ocean. There are moments in life when all you really need to do is pause. Not to give up, not because you're weak, but simply because you don't have to react to everything happening around you. We live in a time where everything moves fast. A message goes unanswered. A strange look from someone on the street. A careless comment from a loved one. An awkward silence at the wrong time. And almost by instinct, we react. We frown. We argue. We defend ourselves. We feel overwhelmed. We tense up. But there is a quiet power in doing nothing in the space where you don't react, but simply breathe, observe, and become aware. The Buddha once said, "There is no enemy more dangerous than an untrained mind, and no friend more reliable than a well-trained one." You don't need to fight everything. You don't always have to explain yourself, prove yourself, or be right. In that inner silence, in that brief pause before you react, a deep kind of peace begins to grow. Imagine standing by a river. Someone throws a rock into the water. The surface ripples and turns murky. But if you don't stir it any further, if you just stand there quietly, the water settles. It becomes clear again. Your mind is like that. You don't have to control your emotions by suppressing them. You just have to not react immediately. Let the feeling come like a breeze. Notice it, acknowledge it, but don't become it. Anger doesn't mean you're an angry person. Anxiety doesn't mean you are weak. All of these emotions, if you don't react, will rise and then fall away. An old Zen master once told me, "Suffering doesn't come from what the world does to you. It comes from how you react to it." There will be times when people misunderstand you. There will be times when they hurt you. There will be moments when you feel like the whole world is against you. But if in those moments you can pause for just 1 second, just not react, you've planted a rare and precious seed of inner peace. Now, I'm not saying this is easy, but it's something you can train. When you're driving and someone cuts you off instead of exploding, take a deep breath. When you get a provocative message, instead of replying instantly, put the phone down. Go for a short walk. When your partner says something that stings, pause, look into their eyes, and ask yourself, what's really happening inside me right now? Just one breath. One moment of stillness can shift the entire quality of your experience. That pause doesn't make you weaker. It makes you stronger. Because now you're living with intention, not being dragged around by old reaction patterns. The Buddha taught, like a solid rock that remains unmoved by the wind, the wise remain undisturbed by praise or blame, by love or hate. Wisdom isn't about having no emotions. It's about not letting those emotions drive your actions. And here's the most beautiful part. When you stop reacting, you don't just heal yourself, you begin to heal the world. Because a person who knows how to pause won't hurt others. A person who knows how to pause won't add fuel to the fire. A person who knows how to pause spreads peace into the space around them. You can start today. No rituals needed. Just one moment. Just one breath. Just one remembering. You are not what happens to you. You are the awareness watching it all. And in that awareness, you'll see peace has never been out there. Peace is born in the moment you stop reacting. There's a quiet kind of exhaustion that's seeping into the lives of so many people, an exhaustion that comes from constantly trying to please others. We grow up hearing things like, you have to be good to be loved. You must succeed to earn respect. You should behave to be accepted. And somewhere along the way, we start living as if we're performing a role, always trying to guess what others want, and then molding ourselves to fit that image. Smiling when we're not happy, nodding when we're filled with doubt, saying the right thing just to avoid conflict. Day by day, we begin to lose ourselves in the endless chase to be approved by the world. But here's a truth we all have to face. You can try your best, and still, some people won't like you. You can be kind, and still be misunderstood. You can do everything to make them happy, and one day wake up to realize you've left yourself behind. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha once said, "Though one may live 100 years and not see the truth, better is one day of life if one sees the path." To see the path means to clearly see who you are and to know that you were not born to be someone else's idea of perfection. You are here to live truthfully, authentically, and fully as the one and only version of yourself. Have you ever stopped to ask, if I were gone tomorrow, what am I living for today? Who am I living for? These aren't meant to unsettle you, but to bring you back to the quiet center of who you really are. A place where you don't have to perform. You don't need to decorate your soul. You don't have to win anyone over. You only need to be you, whole, honest, free. I once met a woman in her 60s who had spent her entire life caring for her family, her husband, her children, her parents, even her in-laws. She rarely said no because she believed love meant sacrifice. But when her children were grown and her hair had turned silver, she looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "I spent my whole life making sure everyone else was happy, but I forgot to ask, what about me?" That one sentence was a bell of awakening. Living to please others is not compassion. It's a kind of spiritual bondage. Because when you trade your truth for someone else's approval, you abandon the most sacred thing, your inner freedom. The Buddha never taught us to live for how others see us. He taught mindfulness to clearly see what comes from greed, hatred, or delusion, and what comes from a pure, honest heart. When you act from sincerity, even if others don't understand, you still feel peace. But when you act just to avoid judgment, then even their praise feels empty. Here's the truth. You can't control what others think. You can't force someone to love or accept you. But you can choose to love yourself. You can choose to be honest with your own heart, even if that means some people might not like it. And here's the miracle. When you start living true to yourself, not only do you feel lighter, but you begin to attract people who are also real. They don't come because you tried to be lovable. They come because you had the courage to be real. They come because they see a light in you, a light that doesn't need makeup, doesn't ask permission to shine, and doesn't apologize for simply being. And I want you to hear this clearly. You deserve to live that way, not someday, today. Not everyone will understand you, and that's okay. What matters is this: don't lose yourself just to be understood. Live like a river flowing freely, not trying to please either shore. Live like a flower blooming because it must not waiting for applause. Live like you're not someone's idea of who you should be, but the most honest, unfiltered, and free version of who you already are. And then, when you finally put down the heavy burden of trying to please, you'll discover something quietly beautiful. Peace was never far away. It's been right here waiting for you in the exact moment you choose to be real. A closed heart might make you feel safer. After all, no one can hurt you if you don't let anyone in, right? But here's the quiet truth. When nothing can reach you. Nothing can truly touch you either. No sunlight finds its way through a door that's locked shut. No hand can hold yours when you're trembling in the darkness of your own loneliness. And then we wonder, why do we still feel so alone? Even when the world keeps spinning around us. When your heart opens just a little, you're allowing life to touch you. Not just joy, but pain too. Not just laughter, but tears. And yet in that open space, love has room to enter, and healing begins. There's an old Buddhist story that tells of a wise monk who had lived through war, betrayal, and deep loss. For years, he lived in solitude on a mountain closed off from everyone, speaking only to trees and the wind. Until one day, he found a small bird, wounded and fragile. For days, he cared for it gently, tenderly, using a kind of softness he had long forgotten he still had. And in that moment, his heart opened again. Not because of philosophy, not because of doctrine, but because of a tiny broken life that needed love. He later told his students, healing doesn't come from running away from pain. It comes when you allow yourself to be soft again. Maybe you've been hurt too many times. Maybe you've learned to toughen up to stop trusting in people, or kindness, or softness itself. But your heart was never meant to be a stone. It was meant to feel, to beat with love, to stir at the sight of beauty. And yes, sometimes to break. And in breaking to heal. And in healing to grow deeper. In the Karaniya Metta Sutta, the Buddha said, "Let your heart be vast like the earth, like water, like the open sky. When your mind is free from clinging, you are untouched by anger, by injury, by sorrow." An open heart is not at war with life. It doesn't close itself off out of fear, but opens because it knows that through that openness, we find our truest self. When you close your heart, every wound freezes. You stop feeling the pain, but you also stop healing. You stop crying, but you forget how to laugh. You don't collapse, but you never truly rise again either. A closed heart is a quiet prison. And in trying to protect yourself from others, you end up hurting yourself the most. But opening your heart doesn't mean letting people hurt you again and again. It means choosing wisely, but not shutting the door. It means knowing how to love without chains, how to forgive without forgetting the lesson. It means choosing not to let your past define how you treat the present. You can't heal by pretending not to feel. You can't move on if you won't admit you once hoped, once loved, once broke. Only when you open your heart to yourself with honesty about the pain, gentleness for the wounds, and patience for the healing, can the real transformation begin. Do you remember the last time you allowed yourself to trust someone? Even just a little. Maybe you were let down. But maybe, just maybe, you also discovered something essential, that you still have the capacity to feel, to care, to love. And that's what makes you human. A closed heart is dry land, but an open heart is a garden. Maybe messy, maybe unfinished, but full of potential to bloom. Don't measure your heart by how many times it's been hurt. Measure it by how many times you dared to open it again afterward. Allow yourself to soften. Allow yourself to ache. Allow yourself to trust again. And most of all, allow yourself to heal, not because the world is perfect, but because you deserve peace, gentleness, and love. Because in the end, an open heart is not a weak heart. It's a courageous one. And wherever there is courage, there is true life. And where there is true life, there is room for peace and love to enter. Focus on just 3 essential things each day. There are days when you wake up and the moment your eyes open, your mind is already flooded with unfinished tasks, people you need to respond to, and vague worries that weigh you down, even though you can't quite name them. Modern life is a tangled web of information. Expectations, deadlines, responsibilities, and emotional noise. It's easy to lose track of what truly matters, what to hold on to, and what to let go of. But then there are quieter mornings. Mornings when you sit still, just for a few minutes, close your eyes, and return to yourself. And from that stillness, a gentle truth rises. Each day, just focus on 3 essential things. The rest you can let go. It sounds simple, but don't let that simplicity fool you. This is also a deeply meditative practice. There's a powerful teaching from the Buddha that goes, where the mind goes, life follows. If your mind spends its energy chasing 1,000 trivial things, fragmented, scattered, and restless, you will feel drained even if you've barely moved. But if you center your energy on just 3 essential things and pour your presence into them fully, then that day you are truly alive. I remember a story of a young student who once asked his old Zen teacher, Master, "How can I live a day without wasting it?" The master didn't respond right away. He simply picked up a teapot, poured 3 cups of tea, and said, "Just keep these 3 cups full. Don't worry about the bottomless ones." The student looked puzzled. So the master explained, "The first cup is mindfulness, to be fully present with what is. The second is compassion, to treat others and yourself with kindness. The third is diligence, to do what must be done without delay or self-pity. Fill these 3 cups each day, and you won't need anything more. As for everything else, what others think how the world spins, let the wind carry it away." We live in a time where everything is trying to grab your attention. Your phone buzzes every 5 minutes. Your inbox never empties. And social media constantly whispers that you're not enough, not fast enough, not smart enough, not successful enough. But do you know what's really running out? Not time. Attention. When you choose to focus on just 3 core things, you begin to reclaim your inner power. You restore your ability to live from the inside out, not from the noise around you. You begin to own your life again, one breath, one choice, one sacred moment at a time. I once knew a woman named Susan. In her early 50s, she lost everything at once: her husband, her job, and her health. She had to abandon all her plans for the future. And for a long while, she fell into a dark, silent space. She used to be a perfectionist, always busy, always performing. But in the stillness of her brokenness, something changed. She learned to live differently. Each morning, Susan would write down just 3 things. Today, I will spend real time with my mother. Today, I will eat one slow meal, no phone, no rush. Today, I will meditate for 10 minutes just to listen to my own heart. That's it, 3 simple acts. And slowly, something miraculous happened. She didn't rebuild her life. By pushing harder, she healed by being fully present. Susan once told me, I used to live to please everyone else. Now, I live so that my own heart can be at peace. And I believe that is one of the purest forms of wisdom. Dear friend, life is already short enough, but we live as if we'll live forever, carrying the weight of the world on our backs. When in truth, all we really need is to walk each day holding just 3 essential gems in our pocket, small but radiant enough to light an entire path. The Buddha never asked us to be superheroes. He simply taught us to slow down, to let go, to breathe mindfully. He said, the one who knows what they truly need, that is the one who is truly free. So let me ask you, what do you need today? If tomorrow were your last day, what 3 things would you hold close? Love presence, a long overdue hug, a quiet meal shared with someone dear, a sincere apology that's been waiting too long. Write those 3 things down and live them with your whole heart. Let the rest go, because you can't carry the whole world, especially if in doing so you lose the most precious parts of yourself. Don't turn your life into a performance. Live honestly, no mask needed. Have you ever wondered how long you've been alive without truly being yourself? Every morning, we put on a layer not to keep warm, but to hide. A role, a character, the perfectly timed smile, the polite nod, the version of us that others will accept. And day by day, like that, we forget what our real face even looks like. We become so good at pretending that even we are fooled. We act like we're okay while inside we feel hollow. We appear strong while quietly falling apart. We say what people want to hear while our hearts scream the opposite. But you know what's even sadder? It's when we start to believe that the mask is who we really are. We live that life not because we want to, but because we're afraid. Afraid of being rejected. Afraid of not being loved. Afraid that if we show up as our real selves, no one will want us. And that's when life stops being life and becomes a stage. The Buddha said to you, one who cannot see themselves cannot truly see life. When we live like a character in a play, we lose the honest lens to see the nature of suffering. We become disconnected from what's really happening in our hearts. But truth is the birthplace of all healing. I once met a woman in her 60s. She was one of those people everyone adored. Gracious, kind, always smiling. But after a few days of silent meditation, she looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "You know, I haven't lived a single honest day in over 40 years of marriage. I tried so hard to be the perfect wife, the perfect mom. But inside, I feel like a shadow." Do you see yourself in that story? We often think being real is selfish, but it's the opposite. Living truthfully is the most generous gift we can give to this world. It means we stop lying to ourselves. It means we accept our brokenness and allow it to exist without shame or denial. A person who no longer wears a mask is free. Free to cry when it hurts, to be quiet when there are no words, to not always have the answers. Free to stop pretending even if no one else understands. And the most beautiful part, when you live honestly, you attract relationships that are honest too. You don't need everyone to love you. Just a few people who love the real you, and that's more than enough. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha said, 3 things cannot be hidden for long: the sun, the moon, and the truth. The truth about who you are will surface sooner or later. So why not live from that truth now? Sometimes living authentically means letting go of certain relationships. But you're not losing anything. You're simply releasing roles that no longer fit. And you might be surprised by the relief that comes from just being yourself. Yes, it might feel lonelier at times, but it's a kind of solitude that heals, not harms. It's the sacred space where your soul can finally breathe. You weren't born to play someone else's part. You came into this life to return to yourself. No pretending, no polishing, no applause needed. Just realness. And here's the miracle. When you take off your mask, you give others permission to do the same. Because authenticity is contagious. It creates a space where others feel safe to be imperfect, to be messy, to not have it all figured out, and still be worthy of love. So, if today you feel tired from trying to please everyone, pause. Take a deep breath. Ask yourself, what does my real face look like? And if you've forgotten, it's okay. Just take one small step. Be honest with how you feel right now. That alone is enough to begin the journey home. Because in the end, only you get to live your life. Don't let it pass like an endless play with no truth. And so, dear friend, if life has felt like a performance for far too long, may today be the moment you choose to take the first mask off. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to please everyone. You just need to be true. Because your truth, with all its cracks and softness and silence, is enough. It's more than enough. And somewhere, someone is waiting to meet the real you. Not the version that smiles on cue, but the one who breathes deeply, feels fully, and dares to live sincerely. Let this be a gentle reminder. You were not born to play a role, you were born to be free. If this message touched your heart, I invite you to subscribe to Buddhism Seeds for more reflections like this. Please like, share, and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your story. Until next time, may you walk gently and live truthfully.